you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
all in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K, it's the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs!
And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida TB. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Tuesday night. It is April 25th, 1 minute past 10 o'clock, and I'm a little bit disappointed because I had the game between Carolina and the New York Islanders going over the 5 mark, which was the over-under. I looked at it this morning, and I said, yeah, it won't be a high-scoring game, but you know what? If Carolina comes out and wins this game, they're probably going to have to open it up. The Islanders are going to have no other choice but to, try and open it up themselves to get back in the game. So it's going to go over 5. And instead, what I didn't want to happen happened. It was the Islanders that took the lead in this hockey game, and they tightened up and bottled down and played defensive, and Carolina could only muster 2 goals. And the game finishes by a score of 3-2 with just my luck because the Carolina Hurricanes pulled the goalie with like 2:35 or 2:38 left in regulation. I was there crossing my fingers, hoping that there was going to be an empty net goal or an equalizer. And in the end, it turns out there was neither. All right. So they win by a score of 3-2. The Dallas Stars. So the Islanders avoid elimination. The Dallas Stars are up by a score of 3-0 after 2 versus Minnesota. Of course, that series is tied at 2. And the other one that's tied at 2 between the Edmonton Oilers and the Los Angeles Kings. They are 8 minutes into period number 1, and this one is scoreless right now. In case you're wondering, Stuart Skinner is your goalie for the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, he was pulled last game, and they brought in Campbell, and maybe some of you wondered what was going to happen. Well, they decided to go back with Skinner, in which, you know what? Is it a good decision or not? I can give you an opinion, but we'll know for certain at the end of the game. It's the Sick Podcast brought to you in part by La Bittt Tibi. So good that I needed 12 today instead of 1. Brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. Also brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group. The Edmonton Oilers have just taken a 1-0 lead. I'll get to it in a second. Energy Transportation Group is a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. And let me see just here. Okay, it looks like it's Evander Kane who's got the goal. Evander Kane puts the Edmonton Oilers up by a score of 1-0. Evander Kane, the same Evander Kane, who, by the way, tied the game up with a huge goal last game in game number 4. And I have to tell you, based on what we've heard about Evander Kane and some of his antics and some of the videos that we've seen on social media, I'm not a fan. So I'm not going to lie to you. Just not a fan. And I wasn't crazy about the Edmonton Oilers giving him this opportunity. But I have to tell you that if you're going to look at just, from a hockey perspective and what he's done, he's now scored the 2 biggest goals in this series for the Edmonton Oilers, or 2 of the biggest. Because, of course, the overtime winner last game was even bigger. But, Evander Kane ties up the game last game and gives the Edmonton Oilers a lead in game number 5. So 2 big goals by him. Hey, I had an interesting afternoon/night earlier this evening as I had a chance to meet the Nelk boys. If we can bring it up. There you go. I would think that most of you watching know who they are. That's Kyle on the left, and that's Steiny on the right. They are the Nelk boys. They started off pretty much doing videos and stuff like that on TikTok, doing some crazy funny stuff. And they got a lot of, they got noticed, and there was a lot of, and they basically got scouted. And, a couple of people, influential people, saw them and said, hey, these guys got something. And then the Paul brothers saw them and brought them to the attention of someone else, and then someone else saw them and said, "Hey, I like what these kids are doing on TikTok," and talked to a family member about them, and then they brought them on board, and they are the Nelk boys, and they host the Full Send podcast. And I watch a couple of podcasts right now. The one that I watch the most often is Full Send, the Nelk boys. I think this is what I like about them. They're authentic. They're genuine. When it's time to laugh, they laugh. When it's time to joke, they joke. When it's time to be serious, they're serious. They're real. They can get emotional. They're just down to earth, real people. And it's what you see is not an act. It's who they are. And when they have fun, they really have fun. They walk a real fine line. They never really go over it. They do some stuff that's really funny. They do some stuff that gets them a lot of views. They met real interesting people. Clearly they have great contacts. They've had great interviews. I really like the way they do their podcast. I'm a big fan, big fan of the way they do their podcast. I watched once again a lot of their stuff, and so I found out that they were in town. And as a matter of fact, they were interviewing George St. Pierre, who's appeared on the Sick podcast before. And it all took place at TriStar on Ferrier. And so I went down with one of my boys who's also a big fan, who likes their stuff as well. And we had a chance to chat with them meet them and chat with them for a little bit. And that's it. They were out of here right after that, and they made their way to Ohio. So it was nice. And if they ever see this, hello, Kyle. Hello, Steiny. And it was nice to meet you. And I hope we can, who knows, maybe even hook up the next time you come to Montreal, even though I know that, you guys won't be bored because you guys really know how to have a good time. And I'm sure that you're already going to have plans, but who knows? Maybe we'll see each other next time around. I want to bring in, for the very first time on the Sick podcast, this is long overdue. I'm going to tell you that I think this young man is a tremendous talent. I think he's going to be on the air for a very, very long time. And he's got a talent. You want to know what the talent is? And Claude Mayotte used to have this talent. Claude Mayotte was very, very versatile. In French, the term is polyvalent. This gentleman that I'm going to bring in, he can, if you ask him to be the voice of the Laval Rocket, he could be the voice of the Laval Rocket. If you ask him to be the voice of a big boxing gala that's taking place anywhere in the province of Quebec, if you ask him to be the voice of, to do an Alouettes game, to do a CF Montreal game, and he probably hasn't done either, but I know he can. If you would ask him to, do the play-by-play of an Olympic event, he could do it. Any event. If you would, if someone would call in sick and an hour before the event, you needed somebody to fill in, he can fill in and he can pull it off. He's that good. He's a natural. I'm not going to call him a young up-and-coming talent because he's already arrived. And once again, the future is bright for him. Anthony Marcotte of BPM Sport, the voice of the Laval Rocket. And look, he's not surprised that I said that, because the last time I saw him, which was a long time ago, I think it was at the launch of BPM Sport at the Montreal Casino, I went up to him and I told him exactly what I just said right now on the air, so he doesn't look surprised. Anthony, comment ça va?
Ça va très bien, Tony. What an introduction. Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's the best intro I've ever gotten. So that's tremendous. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You don't have to thank me. They say respect is earned. It's not given. And I think you've earned it. And that's why I said it.
Thank you. I've been working on this craft for a long time. As you know it, I've been studying what I do for a long time, watching games on TV, listening to them on the radio. And I'm a sports fan first and foremost. So I love sports. I love the emotions. And I'm not only a hockey guy, I can do pretty much everything, like you said, and I like it a lot. So I think people recognize it, and I think it's really fun.
Fantastic stuff. All right. Okay. So, I had a chance to see you last week at the Tibi Sport, and there were, it was the end of the Laval Rocket's regular season. And I said to you, Anthony, what's your schedule look like next week? And you said, Tony, well, they're in that series versus Utica, and whether they win or lose, I will be available Monday, Tuesday. Now, if they win, I'm not going to be available after Monday, but unfortunately they lost. So anyway, Tuesday it was. It all worked out because tomorrow, Wednesday night, I don't know if we have it already because I just asked for it, but if we do, let's bring it up. And if we don't, I'll just talk about it. Tomorrow, Wednesday night on the Sick Podcast, Michael Matheson will join me tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. So Montreal Canadiens defenseman Michael Matheson, very much looking forward to that conversation. I saw Michael, about a week ago at St. Gabriel's Elementary School in Point St. Charles. And he was there on Monday of last week, so 8 days ago. And he went to see the kids, and we had a great conversation. We spent some time together. And I said, Mike, this is the second time I'm interviewing you. And he said, yeah, I know, I remember. And I said, so you remember the first time? He said, yes, I do. I said, it was about 12 or 13 years ago. You were a Sec 3 or Sec 4 student at John Rennie High School in Pointe Claire. You were part of the Spotted Tooth program. You were playing hockey there. And there was a fair, an open house at John Rennie High School. And I went down and, I asked to speak to somebody, an athlete involved in the Spotted Tooth program, and the powers that be of the school, they gave me Michael Matheson. It's now 2-1 for the Edmonton Oilers. So the Oilers, after scoring first, scored second, and now the Los Angeles Kings have narrowed that lead to 2-1. And it looks like, is that Iafallo? Yeah, it looks like it's Iafallo. All right, okay. And, the school gave me Michael Matheson. I remember interviewing him, and everyone, the school told me this guy's going to play in the National Hockey League one day. Anthony, mature beyond his years. When he walked away, I was like, man, this guy's like 15 years old and he's more mature than me. And back in, at that time, I was like 37 or whatever it was. And so, you know what? No surprise. He is playing in the National Hockey League. And he's become a pretty good defenseman, Anthony?
Oh, yeah. He's been a pretty good defenseman in the NHL. The memories I have about Mike Matheson was when he was available to the QMJHL entry draft. He was, I think, the best prospect available for that draft. But he told everyone that he wanted to play college hockey. And sometimes Quebec kids use this as leverage to choose their hockey clubs in the Q. It's been going on forever.
Yeah, but it's like, don't draft me. I'm going to the States.
That's
and then,
right.
Their agent whispers to another team, hey, by the way, if you end up getting your hands on him, he's going to come to you. That's the team he wants to go to.
That's right. But Matheson, old as ground. I think Shawinigan drafted him in the second round. They had discussions with him. He took the time to listen to what they got to offer, but finally decided to go the college route, and it was an excellent avenue for him. Yeah, and he became an NHL defenseman, and what a great sport he is. I think he really embraces the chance that he has to play in Montreal, and he's been really good when healthy this year. And he's going to be really good for those young defensemen coming up in the ranks next year and for the foreseeable future as well.
Yeah, you're right about that. And Anthony, there's an avenue for every player. For some, it's the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. For others, it's the OHL. For others, it's the WHL. For others, it's the U.S. National Development Program. For others, it's with, a college or a university or whatever. The Edmonton Oilers have just made it 3-1. I mean, the floodgates are open in Edmonton. My God, is it Brett Kulak that just scored? Attache Tatsuk, mon chum. Brett Kulak just gave the Edmonton Oilers a 3-1 lead. My buddy Andrea Del Refice from Prima Luna, who's friends with Brent Kulak, must be over the moon right now because Andrea was actually in Edmonton, and he stayed with Brett Kulak a couple of weeks ago at Brett's place, all right? So Andrea must be over the moon, who gave me a call yesterday and said, I'm thinking of going to Boston for round 2. Do you want to come with me? And I said, yeah, sure, let's go. So Andrea's good friends with Jim Montgomery as well, and chances are I might be in Boston next week. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I want to get back to Mike Matheson, who chose the route to go to the United States. He went 1 year with Dubuque, And then after that, I believe it was Boston College for a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
This is the way I look at it, Anthony, and I'd love to have your thoughts on this. If you're a really, really good player who wants to be one of the best and you need to play a lot of hockey, you got to look at junior hockey if you're a skilled player who wants to play a lot of hockey. If you're a player who's going to need some time at that point for either your body or your game or both to come around, at that time, it's a good route to go to the United States. And Mike Matheson, as you know, as much as playing a lot of hockey games is a good thing for some players' careers, at the same time, you know the drawbacks that come with it. You're not spending a lot of time in the gym. You are spending a lot of time in buses, less time in classrooms. Homework is being done on the bus. And it's hard to keep up the speed. And once again, it's hard to fill out your body. But if you go to the States and you play maximum 40 games a year, Anthony, you're spending a lot of time in the gym. You're working on your body. You have time. You don't have to rush your career. You have time. And there's a good league and there's a good place for everyone. And Mike Matheson, clearly, you look at his career right now, you have to say he made the right choice for him, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you a simple thing, Tony. I've been involved in the Q for a long time, over 10 years, calling games for 4 different teams. So I've been involved in this league, and I know what the good things are and what could be improved. I think it's a really good league, but now as I've been involved with Laval for the last 6 years, I've seen both ways, the junior way and the college way. And I think both are good. So at least for our kids, they have options. And I think it's a good thing to listen to them, what they have to offer, and what the young hockey player really wants. If he wants to stay close from his home and play in an excellent league, well, the Q is maybe a good avenue for him. But if he wants to improve himself in different ways, go studying in English, improve that language, there could be a ton of other avenues in the U.S. But at least our kids in 2023, they have options. And if they can have a full scholarship, well, I think it's a good thing to listen to.
Yeah, 100%. The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro's Tascam equipment is supplied by Ericsson Audio, the choice of musicians, engineers, and broadcast professionals. I brought you on because I want to talk about the Laval Rocket. We'll talk about the Montreal Canadiens as well. Of course, I know you follow closely. Anyone who covers the Rocket has to. Why don't we do this? And Yellow and Sammy and Master Control bring up the stats for the players. And we have a couple of charts here. And we're going to start on top with Anthony Richard. 30 goals, 37 assists, 67 points in 60 games. Let's talk about the regular season before we get to the playoffs, if we can. Anthony, I have to tell you, when Richard got called up with the Canadiens, I loved what I saw. I saw NHL pace. I saw NHL explosiveness. I saw NHL speed. And I saw an NHL wrist shot. And, but, you have to, it doesn't, out of all the players that got called up, this is the one who went back down a little bit more often. This is the one who didn't seem to be in the plans, at least not just yet anyway. My question to you is simple. Is Anthony Richard one of those players, a la Corey Locke, Peter White, who were maybe too good for the AHL or like elite in the AHL, but missing a little something to make it to the National Hockey League? We call those tweeners. Is he a tweener, or will Anthony Richard be playing in the National Hockey League next year, if not with the Montreal Canadiens, somewhere else?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I can't really answer because Anthony Richard has been a dominant player in the AHL for only 2 years. So it's not like he's been dominating forever. It's his best season this year for sure, with 30 goals, 37 assists. He was stellar all year for the Rocket, bringing offensive on a regular basis. He was the go-to guy offensively all year. And like you said, legit speed, explosiveness. Clearly, he has an A+. He has A+ skating abilities that could make him an NHL player. Is he good? Is he good enough to be playing on a top 9? Because he's an offensive guy. So if you want to bring him in the NHL, I think he needs to play on a top 9. So that's tough to see, especially he's getting up there in age. It's always possible if you can seize your chance when the door is open.
Yeah.
But I can't put my hand in the fire and tell you, well, I see an NHL regular right now in Anthony Richard.
All right. We take a look at the other players. Peter Abbandonato, Mitchell Stevens, Joel Teasdale, Xavier Simoneau, Brandon Gignac, Pierrick Dubé. Is there one out of those players that we should talk about here for XYZ reason?
Because I think the last one on the list, Pierrick Dubé, has been really impressive because he's only 21. You see the 44 games that he played. It's because he spent a lot of time in Trois-Rivières this year, signed a contract early on, and when a few players came back from Montreal, there were no place left for Dubé. So they sent him in Trois-Rivières for 3 weeks or so. And then when he got called back up, started in the fourth line, but he became, especially down the stretch, a really good offensive weapon for Jean-François Houle. 16 goals, many important goals in those 16 goals. I see a spark plug for a team, a guy that can chip in offensively. He's pretty fast, but he's still young and raw, small player.
Anthony, it sounds like you're talking about Raphaël Harvey-Pinard.
Well, they have a different kind of game.
Okay.
Dubé is not the kind of guy that will go each and every time in front of the net, crash the goalies, and taking up the rebounds. I think Dubé has a better shot, and he can use it from the top circle. That's where they played him on the second wave of the power play at the end, and he was pretty good, scoring important goals. So I think Dubé, on a two-way AHL CHL deal this year, was really important for this team. Yeah. And if I'm Montreal, I'm thinking about an NHL contract with him.
Don't look now, but Adrian Kempe has narrowed the lead to 3-2 as he goes upstairs on Stuart Skinner. My God, the floodgates have opened in Edmonton, and I'll say this. High-scoring games obviously can go either way, but if you're going to beat the Edmonton Oilers, probably not a good idea to be involved in an offensive hockey game. But it is the Los Angeles Kings who scored the last goal of this game, and so once again, they trail by a score of 3-2. Okay. Xavier Simoneau. Obviously, we love to talk about Les Gars de Chez Nous. Talk to me about Xavier Simoneau before we move on.
Excellent start for him. He played most of his games on the top 6 in the first part of the year. But it was bad luck receiving a slap shot, or it was a high stick from Joel Teasdale in December.
Really?
That really punished him in the face. He got a fractured nose, facial injury.
Wow.
And he missed over a month. And when he came back, I don't know why, but it didn't have the same impact on the hockey game like he had in the first part of the year. Is it because the pace took another notch or something? I don't have the answer about it, but he was the first to admit at the end of the season review that he could have been better down the stretch. And I think he got to be better along the boards, one-on-one battles. This is clearly something that he needs to improve. He's a small player, but he was productive when he was in good shape at the beginning of the season. And now he has an NHL contract for the next 2 years. So there's still lots of development in front of him. And he will be a part of the top 9 next year for sure. And I see a good amount of improvement down the line for Xavier Simoneau.
Yeah, listen, Anthony, I'm not saying that this is the case because I would imagine that Xavier Simoneau has suffered injuries prior to the one that you just talked about, because when you play hockey and you're in your 20s, for sure you've had your fair share of injuries, but some players, once they suffer an injury, no matter what the injury is, some of them just don't come back the same way. And that's when you really start to figure out a lot about players. And some of them you can tell will end up going further than others. Maybe it's not the case for Simoneau. I'm not saying that it is, but it probably could be that. If you're saying that he got hurt and then when he came back, was it the pace? Was it this? Was it that? Was it the team? Who knows? Joel Teasdale. We had a chance to see him. He's another great story, but clearly it looks like a one-off, right, for the Canadians with Joel Teasdale?
It looks like it. It looks like it. Joel has been out for 2 seasons for major right knee surgeries. Pretty much the same thing as Andrei Markov back in the days.
Wow.
He had the same thing, 2 different, but the same injury to his right knee. He wasn't a really good skater before getting that injuries. And now, well, he's still a subpar skater in the AHL. But like Joël Bouchard told us about his play, he's a unicorn. He's a guy that plays different.
Yeah.
Really strong down the board, along the boards, protects the puck well. He's really, really strong. Can have a good shot too. Good physical presence in front of the net. But does he have enough to play in the NHL? I don't think so because of his speed. He lacks speed for sure. But 23 goals, it can be a force definitely in the AHL. But like we saw at the end of the season, down the line, when the pace picked up a few notches, he was let down to the 4th line. And that's because he was struggling a little bit to generate offense. So that's how I can see Teasdale, a guy that can be an excellent player in the AHL, but clearly lacking speed to play on a regular basis in the NHL.
Yeah, and obviously the National Hockey League is one step quicker, one step faster than the AHL is. And you know what they say, Anthony, if you can't skate at an NHL level, like forget about it. Oublie ça, it's not going to happen. All right, next, we wish him the best, though. Let's bring up the next chart of the players with the most amount of points after Pierre-Luc Dubé at 32. Chart number 2 has, Matheson Bowie, Danik Martel, Emil Heineman, Jan Misak, Olivier Galipeau, Otto Leskinen, Nate Schnarr, who was involved in the deal, Riley McKay, and Frédéric Allard, who we saw late in the season. Danik Martel, his share of injuries, his share of concussions. Jean-François Hull said at the end of the year that he had a heart-to-heart chat with Danik Martel. And when asked if Danik Martel is going to be back next year, he said, I don't think so. Talk to me about everything this young man's been through, because if he didn't have bad luck, he wouldn't have any luck at all.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He got injured in a fight, actually, in Abbotsford at the beginning of December when the season was going nowhere for the Laval Rocket. So he was the kind of guy that really wanted to spark things up, maybe change the momentum of a hockey game, dropped his glove, and he really fell down awkwardly on the ice and got a concussion. And it wasn't his first, like you said, history of concussions for Martel.
How many has he had, Anthony? How many has he had? Do you know?
I don't know, but a couple of them in the junior ranks for sure. I talked to him heart to heart. I think when he was on the shelf, and it was a tough season for him. Really looking everywhere to see how he could come back from those injuries and be an impact player like he thinks he can have in the AHL. But it was such a bad season for him in all senses of the word. Was on the 4th line for most of the season. Got healthy scratches many times in the first part of the season. Then he got injured, and when he came back, the team was looking for a role to give him. So wish him all the best. Great kid, but I think the end is near for him in the AHL, and I think Europe could be the next thing for him in his career.
Folks, how are you liking Anthony Marcotte so far? Huh? The voice of the Laval Rocket at BPM Sport. I told you, this guy is versatile. This guy is good. He calls it the way he sees it. He doesn't sugarcoat things. He'll give you his honest opinion. He's well-spoken. He's fully bilingual. I love this guy. I'm telling you, this guy's absolutely fantastic. And for those who are not aware of him, I'm glad that I can introduce him here on the podcast. Emil Heineman, 11 games, 7 goals. When he was acquired in that deal, I believe it was the Calgary Flames deal for Tyler Toffoli, if memory serves me well.
You're right.
You know, I inquired, and I was told, Tony, this guy's got an NHL wrist shot. This guy can release the puck. This guy can score goals. Let's see what happens. I take a look at the stats. He's got 7 and 11. Whoever was talking to me was right. This guy can score. This guy can shoot. You had a chance to call his game, so you saw him a lot more closely than any of us did.
The shot is lethal. You're right. I think he has the second best shot that we've seen in 6 years in Laval behind Cole Caulfield. So that's not too bad.
Wow.
The puck goes off his stick really quickly. We saw a slap shot, but it's really his wrist shot that blows our minds. He scored 7 and 11, but he was 7 and 7 at the beginning. So he had an impact from the get-go. They played him with Pierrick Dubé, and they had lots of success together. But he cooled down at the end. The last the 3 remaining games of the regular season, and then in the playoffs, he was a non-factor. So is this something that you should keep in mind in September for training camp? Maybe. But what I saw in that small, like the 11 games that we saw and then the 2 postseason games afterwards, I think shows us that this guy is really close from the NHL, first of all. Not only his shot, but physicality as well. Uses his stick well, responsible like most Swedish player can be. So I really like him. And I see NHL potential, and I don't see him playing in Laval for most of the season next year. I think he may start in Laval, but he will quickly be one of the first call-ups and stay in Montreal for the rest of the year.
All right, okay. There are some players that we missed out at. I think we skipped a couple of steps, which I'm going to get to in a second. But since we have this chart up here, Jan Mysak, I mean, those are disappointing numbers. 5 goals in 40 games, 9 points in 40 games. That's disappointing.
Yeah, well, he was injured, missed a month and a half, 2 months for lower body injury. He worked a lot to come back a better player. And I think he had a lot of things to improve, especially along the boards where he lost most of his battles. So that's a thing that he really needed to improve. Needed to be better on a face-off dot as well to be a centerman in the pro ranks. They mostly used him as a centerman, but oftentimes they would move him to the wing for taking face-off because he was not really comfortable on the face-off dot. I think there's still 2 years left in his on his contract, so I don't feel the need to panic with him. But you're right. These are subpar numbers. I expected more, but is there more to be offered? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. Yeah. I think we can. They didn't give him any power play minutes, but I don't think it was deserving to. So how do we see Mysak in this picture for the NHL? I'm not really sure, but he's still young at 21 years old.
Yeah, Frederic Allard, 2 goals in 40 games, but we saw him score 1 with the Canadiens. And this guy can shoot the puck.
Yeah. Well, it's tough to evaluate the case of Fred Allard. This is a guy that I know him well. Played in the junior ranks with Chicoutimi for 4 years. Then he made the step to the AHL. Played in Milwaukee for a couple of years. Got acquainted with Anthony Richard, which is one of his best friends. But when he arrived in Laval, they didn't have any role to give him. There were 6 or 7 defensemen in front of him that they wanted to see on the ice on a regular basis. And he played almost the identical number of games in Montreal than he actually played in Laval. But when they needed him, they sent him there. They sent him on the ice in Utica on Friday night, and he scored the only goal of the series.
Wow.
So surprising story. End of a season that I don't think Fred really expected it. And I don't know what the plans are for him. Was he just a throwaway in a deal? There were no plans for him in Ontario with the Los Angeles Kings system. They sent him here because maybe he was a Quebec defenseman, and the Rocket was looking for a trade involving Nationar. So I don't know. He doesn't have a contract for next year. So does he still figure in those plans? I don't have an answer for it.
The only goal of the playoffs, of course, because the 2 games they did play in the playoffs, it was a best of 3. They were eliminated. They lost the first 2 games to the Utica Comets. They lost in Laval by a score of 4-0. They went to Utica. They were up by a score of 1-0 on a goal by Allard. And then with 2 seconds left in regulation, 2 seconds left, Utica ties it, and then they win it in overtime. All right, okay. We have a bunch of other players we have to get to if we can. You take your sip of water. Let's go to them right now. Okay. Jesse Ylönen, you talked about Heineman's shot. You said it's the second best shot you've seen in Laval in the last 6 years behind Cole Caulfield. This kid's got a surprisingly very, very hard shot too, Ylönen does.
Yep. From the right side, he needs to be in good position to shot the puck. But Heineman doesn't need a lot of space to shoot from the.
I got it.
From the slot as well. We saw him score the goal. Like he didn't have any time to shoot, but he was able to do it and shooting it top corner. So that's why it's a little bit different. Yeah, Ylönen is really menacing on the power play when he has the chance to go with a slap shot from the top circle. He can be dangerous. We saw some good flashes from him in Montreal, in a place down the road where there was some spots in the top 9 in Montreal for him. So they played him a lot. But can he stay there for many years? I don't think so. I don't see a consistent level of play from Ylönen since he became a member of the Montreal Canadiens organization. And even in Laval, he could be on the tear for a week and cool down for a week, then come back with a few goals where we don't see him at all in a hockey game. So can he be consistent in the NHL on a regular basis? I have my doubts.
Yeah, Raphael RV Pinard, I mean, what a season he had for Laval. 31 points in 40 games. What was even more impressive is sometimes players go up to the big league. They play with different players. Sometimes the style of play actually suits them better than the American Hockey League does, and they'll actually look better at the National Hockey League level. I think RHP is in that category where he looks better in the National Hockey League than he looked in Laval. Some people probably would have doubted that at the beginning, maybe about a year ago or 2 years ago. But, man, he was on fire when he joined the Montreal Canadiens. And, Anthony, I love so many things about him. Focused, hardworking, determined, all the stories you hear about him, working a couple of jobs, in the off season. One of those kids who wasn't drafted in the first time around, second time around, then he's a 7th round pick. The Canadiens probably they picked him because, they wanted to show that they were giving a chance to a kid, the good she knew. And then he ends up being as good as he has been, where people are talking about whether or not he can play on a line with Caulfield and Suzuki next year. Like, that conversation has taken place, whether it happens or not. But, when he went down to Laval, Anthony, a lot of the new generation, a lot of this younger generation, they're not exactly the hardest workers in the world, with all due respect. And some of them, they feel entitled. They've played at the pro level. Oh, I'm not going to go down. And I'm going to tell you one thing. I saw this last year with some pros, and I'm not talking about hockey, but I saw this last year with some pros who were called down to go play with the second team. and they wanted no part of that second team. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you something else. Are you ready for this? Là, tu fais capoter. Now you're going to freak out. The players that were called down to the second team, they didn't even want to go change in the dressing room with the reserve team players because they're pros. And they changed in another dressing room. They were in another dressing room before the game, and they went to that other dressing room after the game. Raphael Harvey-Pinard, when the Canadians sent him down, the next day he had microphones in his face in Laval. And you know what was the first things that he said? I'm happy to be here. And it could be interpreted the wrong way because some people, cynics, might say, what do you mean you're happy to be here? You're in Laval. But he knew that he was going down there to help. He knew that he was going down there because they needed his help. And you know what? He didn't give 60% or 70%. He gave 120% like he does all the time. I love this kid. His parents did an amazing job with him. Amazing.
You're absolutely right. And what you said doesn't surprise me. I'm a little shocked, but it doesn't surprise me. But Raphael, I mean, he's perfect. I don't see any mistakes or habits that he needs to change. He's a professional, full circle. And you're right. When he came back, the first thing, like he said, he really said it. I'm happy to be here because he understood why he was going down. He really wanted to, if it was his last time spent in the AHL with the Laval Rocket, at least, well, for the fans, he would let a good memory of himself playing for the Rocket. And he's just like Jake Evans, developed in the organization. People watched him play, improved a lot, and now he's knocking on the door, and I think he's already an NHL player. And you're right. Maybe in the playoffs, it didn't come his way, he didn't score goals, but 100% effort, and he was probably the most pissed off guy in that dressing room on Friday night to have lost that hockey game. He believed that the team could make a run like they did last year, but it didn't happen this year. Wish him all the best because I really think he played his last game in Laval.
Wow. If I would have told you that out of this Laval Rocket roster, there was going to be a player that in his first NHL game was going to score a goal on his first NHL shot, would you have thought I was talking about Lucas Condotta? Hey,
never.
Chose, huh?
Ouais. Très surprenant. Très surprenant. Great kid. Like we just talked about Raphael Harvey-Pinard. Well, I think Lucas Condotta is pretty much the same. Was a captain at UMass Lowell. Scored big goals for them.
Yeah.
Laval signed him on an AHL contract last year. A contract that became an NHL contract for this year.
Yeah.
He cooled down at the end of the year, but at least 16 goals is pretty good for Lucas Condotta, the only one who played the 72 games in Laval, and we added one with Montreal at the end. So a pretty good season for him, but he doesn't have a contract for next year. So what the Canadians have in mind with him, I really don't know. Just like Joel Teasdale, I don't see skating ability for the NHL in Condotta. Really good along the boards, pretty physical, good leader, but I think is an AHL prospect or AHL player, pretty good AHL player.
I don't know if Alex Belzile is going to be with the Montreal Canadiens next year because he could be a number 13 guy. And you know what? He would be ideal at it too because he's older in his age. I think he's 31 years old and his ceiling, he's already hit it. He's not going to get better as a hockey player. What you see is what you get. And, you know, he doesn't look out of place. And down the stretch, I think he showed us a pretty good wrist shot and ability to score goals as well. Energy guy on the fourth line. And he's always got a smile on his face, and you could tell he loves the game. He wouldn't be the first one who ends up getting called up at probably age 30 or 31 and ends up sticking around. I think Matthew Darche had like a similar type of career. Last year, there was Laurent Dauphin came up, a little bit older as well, and he looked pretty good. This year, he's not on the team, of course, but, you know, it could go to Pizzetta, that job next year. But I'm going to tell you this. Every time I see footage of the locker room that they make us privy to some footage, Belzile is like a joker in the room. He's having fun. He's laughing. And you can tell Belzile's good for the room.
Oh, for sure. You sees it right. I think you prefer, as a head coach, to have a guy like Belzile instead of guys who will pout to be left in the stands or play on the fourth line. That will never be the case for Alex Belzile. He enjoys life, loves hockey, wants to get involved in hockey many years after his career. I think I see a head coach in Alex Belzile after his career. And I really think the Montreal Canadiens will keep him really close from them when he will retire, because I think they have a legit coach inside their organization right now. What a guy.
You know what? Put him on the staff in Laval.
Well, why not? He could be an assistant coach and see him climbing the ranks really quickly.
Yeah.
Everyone likes Alex Belzile. He's so good for everyone. Tremendous presence in the room. Great captain. Speaks well to the media. Doesn't sugarcoat anything. Plays the game right. Can get under your skin as well as a hockey player. I like him a lot. I'm a big fan of Alex Belzile, and I hope the organization will find a way to keep him for next year. And if he plays in Laval, I will welcome him with open arms.
Yeah, I see on this list Nicolas Baudin, defenseman Corey Schoeneman, Matthias Norlinder, Justin Barron, and I'm going to get to a couple of them. But Norlinder, I based on the amount of young defensemen that they have, Anthony, I don't see Norlinder and the Montreal Canadiens working out going forward. I just don't.
Well, it's going to be tough.
Wrong organization for him, just too many players in front of him.
Yeah, the cupboards are full on the left side of the defense for sure.
Yeah.
And we didn't see... Yeah, I think Norlinder improved his play all year, but we never saw that gifted offensive defenseman like they sold us when they drafted him.
Yeah, we were told he could quarterback a power play.
Yeah, but we never saw an inch of it in the AHL. It didn't come close to it. Nicolas Baudin is way better than Norlinder to play on the power play, to move the puck. Norlinder has something good in his play. He's a good skater, can play with pace. But defensively, even if he improved himself, he's still a liability in the defensive position. So I don't see how it will take a miracle to see him work his way through the ranks on the left side of the defense. Good kid, but I don't see potential for him in Montreal. Maybe elsewhere, but clearly not in Montreal. There are way better options than him right now.
You know, Corey Schoeneman is a guy that every time they call him up, I mean, he does the job. Not more, not less. He does the job. I mean, when Marty St. Louis took over last year, Schoeneman caught his eye. But once again, too many young defensemen in front of him. And the problem with Schoeneman is I find, Anthony, he does everything good, but he does nothing great. And I'll add, I'm not so sure he does anything very good. It's just good in all the categories. There's no X factor there to propel him over the others.
Serviceable NHL player, excellent AHL player. That's how I see Corey Schoeneman.
Yeah.
He's a guy that you can keep in the organization on an NHL two-way contract, and you can call him up when there's a rash of injuries, but I don't see anything more. He's in exactly the same situation as Louis Belpedio last year with Laval. Didn't get a really good chance in the organization. Yeah. Look elsewhere. Played for Lehigh Valley this year, the farm club of Philadelphia. Didn't have the chance to get called up in the NHL as well. Those guys, and there are many of them around the AHL, they're good players.
Yeah.
But they can't make the step to be regular full-time NHLers.
Justin Barron, I'm going to say this, okay? I saw him in camp with the Canadiens in Brassard. And he got knocked off the puck. He got hit a couple of times. He wasn't able to get out of those tight spaces. He wasn't able to escape checks. His first pass, was okay. His skating is good, but he didn't look NHL ready. And clearly the Canadians saw the same thing because you know what? He started in Laval. But when he joined the Canadians, I mean, at one point, I think he had scored like 3 goals in a span of under 2 weeks or something like that. But he got involved in the play. He joined the rush. It looked like the weight of the world that was like at the beginning when he arrived in that trade from Colorado that sent Arturi Lehkonen to the Avalanche. It looked like he fought the puck a little bit. It looked like, Montreal pressure situation, stuff like that. He felt the pressure. He embraced it down the stretch. I have to tell you, I liked Barron. And now everyone's talking about the Canadiens have so many young defensemen, and clearly they're going to have to make way for others going forward. Lane Hudson's probably going to be here in a couple of years, and Logan Mailloux is probably going to be here in a couple of years. And because of that, people are already looking at it. Is there one that's going to be out? Is there 2 that's going to be out? I'd think twice if this young man's going to be in a deal going forward because he has something, Anthony. Il y a quelque chose, lui.
Yeah, and the organization is still really thin on the right side. So if you move Barron, who steps in to take his place right now? You have that.
You just have David Savard, correct?
Yeah, you're right. And I don't think Mailloux is ready. They will play him in Laval next year for the full year. I'm pretty sure about that.
I agree with you.
And I really think he needs it because he didn't play a lot the last couple of years. So there's still games to be played for Logan Mailloux next year.
Of course.
So on Justin Barron, you're exactly right. I saw the same thing. When Montreal called him up, I thought it was too quick, maybe. I thought that he would play at least 40 games in Laval. He played just 25.
Yeah.
But he was okay. It was all right. And he improved his play down the stretch. He has a good shot from the point for sure. Will he play on a power play in the NHL? I'm not really sure about that.
Yeah.
Maybe on the second wave, but at most. But I think he could be definitely a second or third pair defenseman if he can improve himself in the defensive zone like he did at the end of the year. And it looked promising. You're right.
All right, so let's remove the chart, and I'm going to finish it off. And I so appreciate your time, Anthony. We're on 50-plus minutes here. I don't know if you expected that, but sorry if you didn't, all right? But you're too good.
I'm on vacation, Tony. Don't worry.
No, well, you know what? The fact you're on vacation, you shouldn't be on with me for 50 minutes. But I want to ask you 2 more, okay? Caden Primo. When Caden Primo got called up to the Montreal Canadiens, there haven't been many performances that have been conclusive. Unfortunately for him, it's probably been the wrong time as well. This team has not been very good for a couple of years. They've hung him out to dry a couple of times. Even when he did have some pretty good games, unfortunately, he wasn't able to pick up too many wins. There was a lot of pressure on him to get Laval into the playoffs. And in the last 2 weeks, he probably played his best hockey. And in the last game, I think he made like 41 saves or something for a shutout. Like it was his best hockey. In the playoffs, he lost both games. But how did he do? And in your opinion, based on what you saw from him at the American Hockey League level, here's a young man who wants to play in the National Hockey League next year. I talked to Eric Engels of sportsnet.ca yesterday, and he said, Tony, it's not many teams do this, but I wouldn't discount it if it happened with the Canadiens, that to start the season, they carried 3 goalies. Because if they don't have Primo with the big club next year, he's waiver eligible. I believe a team will take a chance on Caden Primo. He's young. He's 6'8", and he's got family genes. That's enough for people to take a chance. I said to Eric, I like Jake Allen, but he's reached his ceiling. And by the time the Canadiens are a contender, Jake Allen won't be here anyway. So based on that, I would be worried if Caden Primo was waiver eligible. I would rather keep Primo here. Now, many people don't believe in him, and that's fine. And in the end, they might be right. But all I'm saying is, why take a chance when if you can move Allen, Allen's not going to get you in the playoffs next year anyway. I mean, at least I would be shocked. Is he NHL ready in your opinion, Anthony? And if he does go to waivers and they lose him, do you think that this is a player who may make them end up regretting it?
Look, I've always been a huge advocate for Caden Primo. I really believe in his capabilities of becoming an NHL goaltender, and I think he's really close from becoming one. You're right. He was the go-to guy at the end of the year. I think he played like 30 of the last 32 games of the Laval Rocket at the end of the season with the necessity of winning most of those games to qualify for the playoffs. So for those of you who thinks that, well, he plays in the AHL, doesn't have the pressure of the NHL, well, at least he was the guy to bring the team to the playoffs, and he did it. He was outstanding down the run. Only one game was he pretty, not really good against Cleveland, and I received a ton of messages on Twitter that people were ready to cancel Primo forever. They don't see him in the picture. But then the next 3 games, he wins them all, and the team qualifies for the playoffs. So I think he was outstanding, was stellar in Friday night's game in Utica. Hold the fort until overtime where they lost, but he was tremendous just before then. Look, what you said is really interesting. I think it could happen if they aren't able to move Allen elsewhere. But if the Florida Panthers lost Sam Montembeault to waivers for Montreal, I think Montreal would definitely lose Caden Primo. And when you invest energy, time, and money over 5 years of development on a goaltender, you don't want to waste him for nothing. So if you want to trade him, fine, but you won't get what he really, what really is worth on the market. So that's the decision that they have to make. Should we keep him and really test him in the NHL, or we take the chance to expose him? But you got to know that it's a real possibility that you will lose him for nothing.
All right. In ending, it's a tough question, but you're a big boy, and I know that you'll answer it as well as you can. Is Jean-François Houle the coach for this team going forward? Yes or why? Is he the right man for the job? We know he can do the job. We know that. But in terms of playing the way the Canadians play, so when the players go up, they're playing the same system, having the same philosophies, having the same ideologies, having the same concepts, helping out with player development, everything that they're trying to put in place here. Is he a fit in everything they're doing, or could there be a better fit?
Well, I think Martin Saint-Louis explained for us what the organization really thinks about Jean-François Houle at the end of the season. When Harvey Pinard was having a lot of success with his team, he told the media members that JF was doing a tremendous job in Laval, because when we call guys up, they're ready to play and they fit right in. So I think JF is doing a good job. 2 seasons at the helm of the team, and he qualified for the playoffs each and every time. Good run last year to the semifinals, and this year where he had a depleted lineup for over 3 months, he was able to take the best out of most of his lineup to get them in the playoffs. So he deserves a lot of credit. I don't know how Kent Hughes and the whole organization sees him, because he's not their man. They didn't hire him. But what I see is an excellent AHL coach. He's close from his guys. He believes in them, talks with them a lot. He's a player coach. So I don't think you will find a better man to hold the fort in Laval elsewhere. I think JFO is perfectly fine.
Anthony, this was a first for you tonight on the Sick Podcast. I'm hoping it was not the last. I'd love to talk to you more often going forward because you know what? This is like the fastest hour probably that I've done ever since I started, which was about 2.5 years ago. It just seemed like the time flew, and we had ourselves just a great casual conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
For sure. I don't have the chance to talk in English as often as I want to, but at least my parents, all their English courses that they made me do early on in my life, at least it served. So that's a good thing.
Well, I'll tell you right now that your English is better than my French, and I'm actually making some money working in French. So who knows?
Just a little bit of money.
It's better. It's better. It's better. It's better. It's better than my French. I can tell you that. Anthony, thanks again. You have a great night. All right.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I'll always be ready to answer the bell for you, my friend.
Merci beaucoup. J'apprécie énormément. Merci, Anthony. Anthony Marcotte from BPM Sport. Thank you, Anthony. All right, there you have it. Okay, once again, our guest tomorrow night, I hope you enjoyed Anthony as much as I did. Once again, I really think he's great. Our guest tomorrow night, look at that. Look at this. We're going to bring it up right now. There you go. Mike Matheson will join me tomorrow night at 10 p.m., same time, same place. It's the Sick Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast tonight, like it, share it with your friends, comment Sick, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K, S-I-C-K. When I'm yellow, myself and Sammy and Juliana, C-S-I-C-K, all over the chat. We know that you're liking it, and that makes us feel pretty good about what we are doing. If you're going to listen via Google, Apple, or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. That's another way that we can feel the love. So once again, Michael Matheson tomorrow night on the Sick Podcast. Tell your friends about it. Share it. Call your buddies up. Maybe not now because it's 11 o'clock at night, or maybe you can text them right now. Say, hey, Mike Matheson is going to be on the Sick Podcast tomorrow night with Marinaro. And you can tell your buddies, I bet you it's going to be sick, just like Marinaro. He is sick. I am sick. The podcast is sick. You are my sick army. You are my sick community. For Agnello and Sammy and Master Control, they're Cavallaro. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature.